Airports are places of transition, of arrivals, departures, and decisions that shift lives. But on this ordinary afternoon at JFK International Airport, Gate C-17 would become something far more than a place to board a plane. It would become the stage for a clash between hate and honor, a battleground where character was tested and courage quietly triumphed. This is not just a story about a black female pilot. It's not just about racism, injustice, or viral outrage. It's a story about what it means to stand your ground with grace, and it all begins exactly where it ends, with Captain Maya Harris walking through that terminal in full uniform, unaware that she was about to fly through the storm of her life, before ever stepping into the cockpit. The calm before the storm. Captain Maya Harris walked through the gleaming corridors of JFK International Airport like a storm wrapped in calm. Clad in her navy blue pilot uniform, hat tucked neatly under her arm, her gold trimmed wings sparkled proudly on her chest. She had the walk of someone who had earned every stripe, every hour in the sky, every emergency handled, every passenger safely delivered across continents. But today, something felt off. The chatter of the terminal buzzed in the background, announcements echoed overhead, families reunited, kids cried from snack-fueled exhaustion. Yet Maya's mind was already on flight 682. She had reviewed the charts, checked the weather patterns, and run her mental checklist 3 times. Everything was routine except the eerie feeling crawling up her spine, the kind of instinct only a seasoned pilot could recognize, the calm before turbulence. As she approached Gate C-17, heads turned, not just at the pilot's uniform, but at the woman wearing it. A black woman, poised, powerful, a symbol many weren't used to seeing in command of a cockpit. But she wasn't here to seek approval, she was here to fly. The first strike, words that burned from across the gate. Karen Matthews spotted her, and something inside her ignited like dry grass under a magnifying glass. Karen, in her 50s, wore entitlement like an accessory. Her platinum, blonde hair was stiff with hairspray, sunglasses perched on her head like a tiara. She dragged an oversized Louis Vuitton suitcase behind her and radiated the energy of someone itching for a fight. She squinted at Meyer as if spotting a mistake on a receipt, then scoffed. Oh great, she sneered to no one in particular, loud enough to be heard. Another diversity higher playing pilot. The words sliced through the terminal like broken glass. Maya paused, not because she hadn't heard worse, but because it still stung every time, the calculated doubt, the dismissal, the way some people couldn't imagine a woman, a black woman, commanding the sky. She turned slow and steady, the same way she'd once faced down a lightning storm over the Atlantic. "Ma'am, is there something I can help you with?" Karen marched toward her, a storm of righteous indignation. "Yeah," she barked, "you can tell me who the real pilot is, because there's no way you're flying this plane." All around, conversations halted, phones rose discreetly, the oxygen in the room seemed to thin. But Maya didn't flinch, she didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "I am Captain Maya Harris, and I'll be flying your plane to Atlanta today." Karen's jaw clenched, her lips curled into a snarl, and in that moment, the tension became more than words. It became dangerous. When hate turns violent, the world seemed to slow in the seconds that followed. A breathless silence swept across Gate C-17 as Karen's hand balled into a fist. Her face twisted into rage, pure, burning, irrational rage. And then, before anyone could step in, she swung. Her knuckles slammed into Maya's cheek with a sickening thud. The force of it sent the pilot stumbling sideways, barely catching herself against the metal barrier. Gasps exploded through the terminal. A baby started crying. A soda cup dropped and rolled across the floor, forgotten. Maya blinked, stunned more by the audacity than the pain. She touched her lip. Blood. Real. Hot. Karen, breathing hard, looked almost proud of herself. "Now maybe someone will listen," she barked. But this wasn't 1963. This was 2025, and Karen had just assaulted a uniformed airline captain in front of dozens of witnesses. What she didn't realize in her moment of fury was that nearly everyone around her had seen the bill. Thup. Phones had been filming long before her fist flew. TikTok, Instagram, Live, some streamed it in real time. The internet had already seen her true face, and now justice was closing in fast. Eyes of the world within moments, a uniformed TSA officer sprinted toward the scene, followed closely by an off-duty air marshal who happened to be standing in the coffee line. Karen didn't even get a second swing. "Ma'am, get on the ground, hands where I can see them." Karen screamed as the marshal restrained her. "She provoked me. That woman assaulted my beliefs. You saw her. She was threatening me, but no one was buying it." Passengers stepped in now. Dozens of them, a mother with 2 kids, a young man in a business suit, an elderly couple who had once marched for civil rights. They weren't just bystanders. They were witnesses. One shouted, "I got it all on video." Another called out, "She didn't even touch you. You hit her." A teenage girl stepped forward, phone still recording. "This is going viral. Everyone's gonna see what you did." And they were right. Already, hashtags were popping up online. #Captain Maya, #Justice at Gate C-17, #Racist Karen exposed Karen's face, twisted with arrogance just minutes earlier, now broadcast panic. She kicked, screamed, and flailed as she was cuffed, but the crowd had turned. Meanwhile, Maya stood back up. She pressed a tissue to her swollen lip. Her hands didn't shake. Her eyes didn't water. She stood tall, not as a victim, but as a witness to her own strength. Passengers applauded her. One little boy whispered, "She's like a superhero," and in that moment she was. Justice in motion, the tension crackled like static in the air as Karen Matthews was yanked backward and slammed to the floor. Her leopard print carry on tipped over, spilling designer makeup, tangled earbuds, and a half-eaten protein bar across the shiny airport tiles. She wailed, "This is insanity. I'm a mother. I have rights." But no one was listening anymore, not the officers restraining her, not the passengers standing in a wide semicircle, not even the gate staff who had all frozen in quiet disbelief. Every eye was on the woman who had dared to punch a pilot and still tried to play the victim. Maya, holding a cold compress to her bruised cheek, stood aside, silent. Her strength spoke louder than any protest. The off-duty air marshal radioed for backup. The TSA agent collected witness statements. Police were en route. "Is she going to jail?" someone asked aloud. The air marshal replied without hesitation, assaulting an airline captain in uniform. "She'll be lucky if it's just jail." The buzz of camera phones intensified. Passengers nodded in agreement. There would be no sweeping this under the rug. Not this time. Karen's reign of entitlement had come crashing down at cruising speed. A terminal united as officers led Karen away, still ranting about conspiracies, real Americans, and being set up. Something remarkable happened. The passengers didn't just return to their seats. They rallied. It began with a slow clap. One woman in a wheelchair started it, then a man with a cane. Then 3 teenagers with matching travel hoodies. The applause rose like thunder rolling through the terminal. "Captain Harris, we're with you. You're the kind of pilot I want in the sky. Fly us to Atlanta, please." Maya stood frozen, her hand still holding the compress to her cheek. But her eyes, those calm, knowing eyes, began to glisten. Support flooded in, unspoken and real. A little girl handed her a juice box and said, "My mom says you're the bravest person she's ever seen." Someone gave her a new mask. A gate agent offered a seat in the private crew lounge. But Maya didn't need to sit. She needed to stand, because right now the world was watching, and for once the world was standing with her. Phones were still recording. But it wasn't just about catching the crime anymore. It was about capturing the courage that came after it. Captain Maya Harris didn't just survive a racist attack. She became a symbol of resilience. The arrest that made headlines by the time uniformed NYPD officers arrived at Gate C-17, Karen's face was pale, no longer from rage, but from fear. Her confident shrieks had turned to panicked stammers as the silver cuffs locked tightly around her wrists. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "I was threatened. I was afraid." She looked hostile. The officer, a Latina sergeant with no patience for prejudice, stared at her coldly. "You punched a federal pilot in uniform, ma'am, and it's all on video. You're under arrest for assault, committing a hate crime, and causing a public disturbance." Karen's mouth opened again, but no words came out, only a gurgled sob as she realized there would be no sympathy, no special treatment, no escape. The crowd parted like a sea as the officers led her out. Phones filmed the walk of shame. Her name trended within the hour. #Karen at gate C17, #no fly for hate, #Captain Maya deserves better later that day. Airport police confirmed her charges publicly. Karen Matthews, a former suburban PTA president, was officially banned from flying with 5 major airlines and faced potential jail time. Her mugshot hit the news before her flight to Atlanta could have even taken off. And the face of justice was no longer just a badge, it was Maya. The captain's rise, what no one in the terminal knew, what even Maya herself didn't know, was that someone else had been watching from the back of the gate, silently taking in the entire scene. Richard Caldwell, the CEO of Horizon Air. He had arrived that day for a surprise inspection of customer service standards, but found himself witnessing something far more important. After Karen was taken away and the crowd began to settle, he approached Captain Maya Harris with deliberate steps. He was tall, graying, with an expression that radiated both command and compassion. "Captain Harris," he said, offering his hand, "I'm Richard Caldwell." Maya blinked, caught off guard. "Sir, I didn't know you were here." "I was," he said softly. "And I saw everything, your restraint, your professionalism, your courage." She nodded, unsure of what to say. Then he added, "As of today, I'm not just endorsing the charges against that woman. I'm also promoting you." Maya stared. "Promoting me? You've already proved you're more than a pilot." He said, "You're a leader. We need someone like you heading our international pilot training program. You'd be mentoring the next generation, teaching them not just to fly, but to lead like you did today." Maya's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, the terminal noise fell away. This wasn't just justice. It was recognition, a doorway opening to something bigger. The crowd, overhearing the conversation, burst into applause again. And Captain Maya Harris, bruised but unbroken, realized she hadn't just weathered a storm. She had risen above it. From passenger seat to legacy weeks passed since the incident at gate C-17, but the world hadn't forgotten. Captain Maya Harris was no longer just a pilot. She had become a household name. Morning shows invited her for interviews, articles praised her poise under pressure, and young girls, especially girls of color, were drawing pictures of pilots with her face, but true to her roots, Maya wasn't interested in fame. She was focused on impact. She stepped into her new role as head of the International Pilot Training Program with quiet confidence. The Academy's hallways echoed with excitement the day she arrived. Recruits stood taller when they saw her. Instructors greeted her with the kind of respect that could only be earned in fire. On her first day of training, she gathered a fresh class of recruits, men and women from all backgrounds, each with a dream to fly. She stood before them not as a celebrity but as a mentor forged in experience. "Out there," she said, her voice steady, "you'll face storms on the radar and in life. People will doubt you, misjudge you, and try to ground you, but never forget, the sky belongs to everyone." The class erupted in applause. That day, Maya didn't just teach aviation. She taught legacy. The video of the incident had traveled farther than any flight Maya ever piloted. 20 million views, 30 million. Then 50, it was everywhere, news channels, social feeds, classroom discussions, even civil rights forums. But what made the moment unforgettable wasn't just the punch, it was Maya's reaction, her restraint. Her dignity, her power in silence. Social media turned her into more than a trend, it made her a symbol. Artists painted murals of her in pilot wings across city walls. A national campaign launched, Fly with Grace, inspired by her name, her story, her presence. But the real victory came quietly. One day, while walking through the same terminal where it all happened, Maya heard a soft voice behind her, Captain Harris. She turned to see a young black girl, no older than 9, holding her father's hand. The child looked up at her with shining eyes. "I want to fly planes like you." Maya knelt down. "You will," she smiled, "and you'll fly higher than I ever did." And just like that, Maya knew this wasn't just the end of a story. It was the beginning of a movement. When Maya Harris first entered Gate C-17, she walked in as a pilot, a seasoned captain prepared for another flight. But when she walked out of it, she had become a symbol. Not just for aviation, not just for women of color, but for every person who's ever been underestimated, disrespected, or told they didn't belong. Maya didn't retaliate with violence. She didn't collapse under humiliation. She stood, and in standing, she inspired millions. The Karen who struck her faded into the shadows of her own shame, while Maya rose, higher than any aircraft, carried by dignity, purpose, and the winds of justice. Because in the end the lesson was clear: you can try to ground a soul, but some were born to fly, and Captain Maya Harris, she was already flying long before the plane left the runway.